Hello everyone, welcome to the Montana Farm Bureau Field Notes podcast. My name is Haley Droogsma. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Digital Communications Lead here at MFBF. I'd like to kick today's podcast off with a reminder that if you have anything you'd like to learn about, a pertinent news story, or someone you want to see us bring on the podcast, whether that's yourself or someone you know, please shoot me an email at haleyd@mfbf.org. That's HALEYD@mfbf.org. My goal is to always bring you interesting, exciting content about agriculture, and I'd love your recommendations. Now let's get into today's episode. Kicking things off with our Montana Ag News stories today, an effort to boost the canola industry and research specific to canola in Montana is the goal of a producer-driven canola checkoff referendum going out for approval this summer. The program would be administered by a new Montana Canola Checkoff Committee and overseen by the Montana Department of Agriculture. The referendum would impose a tax of 10 cents per hundredweight or 5 cents per bushel on a new canola checkoff program that is estimated to bring in $265,000 annually. A majority vote is needed for the referendum to pass. The proposed checkoff is both voluntary and refundable according to the Montana Department of Agriculture. Project funding decisions will be made by a 5-member grower committee supported by advisors from Montana State University, the Montana Department of Ag, and the canola industry. Taking things down to our southern border, Mexico's National Service of Agroalimentary Health, Safety, and Quality recently reported a case of New World Screwworm in Ixhuatlan de Madero, Veracruz in Mexico, which is approximately 160 miles northward of the current sterile fly dispersal grid on the eastern side of the country and 370 miles south of the U.S.-Mexico border. This new northward detection comes approximately 2 months after northern detections were reported in Oaxaca and Veracruz, less than 700 miles away from the U.S. border, which triggered the closure of our ports to Mexican cattle, bison, and horses on May 11, 2025. While the USDA announced a risk-based phased port reopening strategy beginning as early as July 7th, this newly reported NWS case raises significant concern about the previously reported information shared by Mexican officials and severely compromises the outlined port reopening schedule of 5 ports from July 7th through September 15th. Therefore, to protect American livestock and our nation's food supply, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins ordered the closure of livestock trade through southern ports of entry, which went into effect on July 9th. To ensure the protection of U.S. livestock herds, the USDA is holding Mexico accountable by ensuring proactive measures are being taken to maintain a New World Screwworm-free barrier. This is maintained with stringent animal movement controls, surveillance, trapping, and following the proven science to push the New World Screwworm barrier south in phases as quickly as possible. Coming back home up north, thanks to 2 unique licensing agreements, new Canola cultivars developed at Montana State University will have the opportunity to make maximum societal and commercial impact. The MSU Technology Transfer Office licensed 2 MSU cultivars of Camelina to independent companies in Montana and Connecticut. Camelina, which comes from the same plant family as mustard, broccoli, and cabbage, is an oilseed plant that can be used for biofuels, cosmetics, and livestock feed and supplements. Agreements such as those with Sustainable Oils and Ash Creek Renewables mean that while MSU still owns the lines, the companies have exclusive rights to commercialize them and develop new products with them. The Q1 2025 U.S. Quarterly Lamb Report shows largely positive trends for American lamb despite a slight overall decline in lamb sales. While total U.S. lamb sales dipped 1.4% in dollars and 3% in volume, American lamb held steadier with just a 1.2% drop in volume and a slight 0.4% gain in dollar sales, especially notable given that Q1 2025 did not include Easter holiday sales. Regional performance varied, with the Northwest market solely responsible for the national decline. Ground lamb was a standout, surging over 17% in dollar sales and 19% in volume. U.S. lamb exports also hit a high, up to 26% year over year, driven by strong demand in Mexico and the Caribbean. The Meat Institute and the Meat Foundation have released an updated guide to meat processing to increase understanding of meat production and the unique nature of the ingredients and processes used to make nutrient-dense meat and poultry. The guides are meant to help the public better understand nutrition, processing definitions, labeling practices, and ingredient functions. The guide defines processed meats and provides more transparency on meat and poultry's nutritional importance and safety, referencing the best nutritional science available to underscore the importance of nutrient-dense processed meats to the healthy dietary patterns of children and vulnerable populations like adolescent girls and the elderly. The U.S. Department of Agriculture announced it will not allow additional imports of specialty sugars beyond what is required by international agreements. This move supports the Farmers First policies promoted by Secretary Rollins. Officials cited the harmful effects of recent policies, rising production costs, and a trade environment that disadvantaged United States producers. They emphasized that sugar imports have significantly increased over the past 2 decades, contributing to the decline of domestic sugar production and the closure of related facilities. The decision is intended to protect American sugar farmers and help stabilize the agricultural sector. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is proposing new wolf hunting and trapping regulations to reduce the statewide wolf population as required by law. Despite increased harvests, wolf numbers have remained stable, prompting targeted changes, especially in western Montana. Key proposals include increasing harvest limits per license, restricting trapping dates in certain areas, setting a statewide quota of 500 wolves, and allowing night hunting on private land. These changes may reduce Fish, Wildlife, and Parks revenue by about $43,000. Public comments are open until August 4th, with final regulations to be decided August 21st. Director of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, Christy Clark, elaborates on the proposal.
So Fish, Wildlife, and Park just made the recommendations to the FWP Commission for wolf management. They'll be setting the season at the next commission meeting in August. And that is the meeting where we set quotas and seasons and decide, what we recommend to the commission for adoption of how we're going to hunt wolves for the next year. So this year, the staff, after going through session, we kind of circled up and decided that we're probably going to have to take a little bit more of an aggressive stance. We also looked at the wolf numbers, and they're pretty much staying the same. A slight drop in one area, but mostly I would say just a straight line across the board. So there's a lot of tools in the toolbox, and we're not seeing a reduction in wolf numbers. So one of the things I think that happens in those situations is we got a lot of wolf bills introduced this session. Not many of them passed, only a couple of them did, but it was a signal to us at the FWP agency that we need to maybe take a more aggressive look. So one of the things we recommended to the commission, and it will be the commission's decision, not ours, I want to be clear about that, is more of a statewide quota. We've got carve-outs around the park in some sensitive areas, but really just making sure that, wherever you are, when that wolf harvest hits that number, it's a statewide quota, not specific areas. Some areas hit the quota right away, and then some areas never did hit the quota in the last season. So we're hoping that will help. We've tweaked some licenses so you can take more than one wolf in some areas in a couple of the regions with a trapping license or with a hunting license. So the tweaks aren't major for us, with the exception of the change in how we see the quota. That being said, it is up to the commission, and they can certainly introduce any sort of amendments to that they want. And so we will just give our recommendations. We've looked at the numbers, taken into consideration the legislature, and we will leave the rest up to them, and that will be decided at the August commission meeting. All that information is on our website, and you can see in detail what our recommendations to the commission were. Thank you.
Transitioning to Farm Bureau news, but keeping the subject of wolves, the American Farm Bureau recently released a market intel report regarding the impact of wolves on farmers and ranchers in the western United States. While the expansion of gray and Mexican wolf populations is widely viewed as a conservation win, it poses significant and often devastating challenges for ranching families. A University of Arizona study reveals that even modest levels of wolf-related calf loss, around 2%, weight reduction around 3.5%, and increased management costs can slash annual ranch revenue by 28%, with long-term profitability dropping by nearly half. Beyond direct depredation, wolves trigger chronic cattle stress, lower reproduction rates, and demand expensive, labor-intensive management changes, costing U.S. ranchers over $128 million annually. Yet, compensation programs often fall short, failing to cover indirect losses or long-term impacts and proving difficult to access. For ranchers across wolf-occupied regions, this isn't just a wildlife issue, it's an economic, emotional, and operational burden that threatens the sustainability of multi-generational operations. The study underscores the need for producer-informed wildlife policy that supports coexistence without sacrificing rural livelihoods. County Farm Bureaus across Montana have been active in hosting a variety of events recently. Yellowstone County Farm Bureau sponsored a Mustangs baseball game in Billings. Farm Bureau members got free entry to the game, county members taught the general public about agriculture while sharing the Farm Bureau mission, and Yellowstone County member Greg Gable's son, Trent, even got to throw the first pitch. Last week, Park County Farm Bureau hosted an informational water rights meeting in Clyde Park. The meeting featured Hertha Lund, an attorney, founder of Lund Law in Bozeman, with nearly 30 years representing landowners and property, water rights, eminent domain, and land use cases. Around 80 people attended to hear about current issues in the Shields Valley area and the proper process for changing water rights. Dawson-Webo County Farm Bureau recently held their rescheduled summer picnic, and many counties across the state are having fun in the sun at their respective county fairs. For more information on how you can be involved at the county level, contact your county leadership or regional manager today. Our Montana Farm Bureau President, Cindy Johnson, was one of the Farm Bureau state presidents from across the country, along with Farm Bureau's National Committee chairs, who joined American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall at the White House to hear from several cabinet members, administration officials, and senior White House staff. It was a morning filled with good discussions about Farm Bureau's priority issues. Speakers, including Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, took questions from state presidents and expressed appreciation to Farm Bureau leaders for their time in Washington sharing agriculture story. During the meeting, Rollins announced that agricultural producers who suffered eligible crop losses due to natural disasters in 2023 and 2024 can now apply for $16 billion in assistance through the Supplemental Disaster Relief Program. Keeping things in D.C. for this next story, Montana Coffee is a weekly constituent event hosted in Congress by Montana's federal delegation. Every Wednesday, Congress is in session. Senators and representatives invite Montanans visiting D.C. to meet them over coffee, share feedback, and often enjoy a light breakfast. These gatherings date back to 1992, initiated by Senator Max Baucus as Cowboy Coffee, and have continued for decades to foster direct dialogue between Montanans and their congressional representatives. One of our own, Katie Brown, president of the University of Montana Western Collegiate Young Farmers and Ranchers chapter, was recently in attendance during her summer internship with the American Farm Bureau Federation.
A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to attend Montana Coffee in Washington, D.C., where I got to meet our senators and our representatives. I got to speak with Senator Daines and Senator Sheehy about Farm Bureau, about agriculture, hunting, rodeo, things like that. It was very, very fun experience and very interesting experience getting to meet them and talk to them in such a chill environment, and not really so much about politics, but more of just about what's going on, what I'm doing. They asked me questions about Farm Bureau. When I told them I was with Farm Bureau, they got super excited and told me that they love Farm Bureau and they love working with us, which was just great to hear. And they love working with AFBF, which was also great to hear. Overall, it was a very good experience, and I'm so glad I got the chance to do it.
Now it's time to shift to our members in the news section, and boy, do we have a lineup for you today. Keeping on the coffee subject, Park County's Summit Browning and his S-Bar-B Cowboy Coffee business were recently featured in Ag Daily. From a high school ag shop in Gardner, Montana, to over 150 retail locations across the West, S-Bar-B Cowboy Coffee is more than just a bag on the shelf. It's a brand built from Browning's childhood dream of owning a ranch. But Summit doesn't only intend to use his profits for a future ranch. His business also donates a portion of its earnings to FFA and Farm Bureau. Thank you, Summit and S-Bar-B Cowboy Coffee, for your support of our mission. You can visit their website at sbarbcowboycoffee.com. And if you'd like to read the full article or any of the other news stories mentioned in this podcast, visit mfbf.org and click Join. Upon joining our Montana Farm Bureau organization, you will not only receive a bi-weekly e-newsletter with access to the full stories discussed on this podcast 3 days before it's released, but you'll also receive our monthly news brief, quarterly Spokesman magazine, and become an active member in the fight for Montana agriculture. You'll gain access to a vibrant network of Montana producers, a voice impacting how agriculture is represented in our state and country's legislation, and the largest general ag organization in the state of Montana. Head to mfbf.org for more today. Next up in our Members in the News section is Jesse Stetson of Carbon-Stillwater County's Farm Bureau, accompanied by Vice President Casey Mott of Custer and veterinarian Dr. Katie Rain with Crazy Mountain Veterinary Services in Harlowton. The members recently gave Northern Ag Network staff member Bernadette Jensen her first Montana branding experience. The branding was hosted by Jesse's business, Stetson Forge, in collaboration with War Party Ranch. Vice President Mott shared advice about roping calves in the branding pen, while Dr. Katie Rain explained the Beef Quality Assurance Program and how to ensure that typical branding practices like vaccination, castration, and the branding itself remain grounded in purpose and care. Katie Brown returns again as her article titled "What Are Horses Used For?" was recently published by the American Farm Bureau's Foundation for Agriculture. In the article, Brown details the variety of roles horses take on in the Rocky Mountain West, from moving cattle to competing in rodeo or other events to therapeutic outlets. 2025 ACE, Advocate, Communicate, Educate class member Cody Schick explains in a recent video published by Northern Ag Network the opportunities that his employer, Molson Coors, has had to improve grower relationships through their Power Elevator expansion, along with their annual field day bringing together Montana barley growers and senior leadership for a day of camaraderie, awards, and of course, some ice-cold beer. Yet another ACE class member, Lauren Kett, and her counterpart, Lily Anderson of Park County Farm Bureau, were recently featured in the Park County Dugout for their work at the Livingston Farmers Market, teaching attendees about milk production. Lily brought her dairy cow named Milkshake, and kids were able to ride a stationary bike, frothing milk into milkshakes that were given out for free, all while having meaningful, informative conversations about the dairy sector. In another Northern Ag Network broadcast, young farmer and rancher member from Shelby, Clayton Lohr, elaborates on the wins and caveats associated with the latest USDA Supplemental Disaster Relief Program that, as mentioned earlier, was announced by Secretary Rollins to the Farm Bureau state presidents during their meeting in Washington, D.C. A quick transition to our upcoming events. In that same broadcast featuring Clayton Lohr, yet another ACE class member and Northern Ag Network broadcaster, Andy Schwab, announced the Farm Bureau night at the Bear Creek Saloon pig races. This is bound to be a great time, with all betting proceeds going to Carbon-Stillwater County Farm Bureau's 4-H and FFA sponsorships. Not only will there be great food, beverages, entertainment, and community, but Farm Bureau is also cheering on their signature pig, Albert Einswine, while Andy Schwab himself is set to MC the event. Mark your calendars for Hoofin' It for Hunger 2025. We will be holding this annual 5 and 10K race at Depot Park in Dillon, Montana, Saturday, September 20th. Registration will kick off at 10 a.m. with the 10K starting at 10:30, the 5K at 11, and awards at noon. There's also a virtual runner option if you can't make the in-person race and would still like to contribute to the Montana Food Bank Network, help feed our hungry Montana neighbors, and receive a t-shirt. Get ready for District 6 Fall Fest. This wonderful event brings together Richland, Dawson, Webo, Macomb, and Prairie counties for dinner, dancing, a keynote speaker, door prizes, and a host of fun activities. You won't want to miss out on Fall Fest, which will take place on October 4th in Sidney, Montana. Stay tuned and like the District 6 Fall Fest Farm Bureau Facebook page for more details as they're released. And last, but certainly not least, don't forget to also mark your calendars for the 106th Annual Montana Farm Bureau Convention and Trade Show, running from November 17th through the 20th, 2025 at the Hilton Garden Inn in Missoula. More information will be shared as we approach that date. And that wraps up another episode of the AgNewsWire edition of the Montana Farm Bureau Field Notes podcast. Keep an eye out for some exciting episodes that are coming to your ears very soon. Thanks all you lovely members of the Montana Farm Bureau family for tuning in today. Catch you all on the next one.